And Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. Doctor, it's good to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm wondering your thoughts on all of this because I heard you in an interview earlier today suggest the president might be trolling the Fed chair, and it wouldn't be the first time. Do you believe the administration has overplayed its hand in this case?
Well, Joe, I think it's important to point out that the president knew nothing of this investigation, and we haven't heard him really speak on it yet either. So let's wait and see what he's actually thinking. I think it's also important to point out that the theme from this White House and from Capitol Hill right now is a theme of transparency, of accountability, of addressing fraud, waste, and abuse. And I think that in particular that Chairman Powell was at a congressional hearing. He was questioned about this budget of his federal building. He was given $1.8 billion. I've heard he may have spent $3 or $4 billion. And did he mislead Congress? I don't know. Did he break the law? I don't know. But I think there's other important issues we need to be addressing as well.
Well, I understand that, and I just want to be clear and fair here, Senator. When I refer to the administration, I'm referring to the Department of Justice as well. Even if the president didn't know about this, is this a bridge too far to threaten criminal charges against an outgoing Fed chair?
Well, look, if anybody understands lawfare, it would be President Trump and his administration, that how political lawfare has been used against him. And I think it's important to point out that Jerome Powell is the one that has made this whole relationship political. In Trump 45, he raised interest rates sooner than they needed to be. During COVID, he was too late, too slow. Jerome Powell in responding to inflation, he said it would be temporary. Just a month before the presidential election, he dropped interest rates 0.5%, and now he refuses he's been slow to respond and bring those interest rates down as well. So I feel like after 8 years, Jerome Powell has made this political. He's functioning at an emotional level right now on this, and I'm looking forward to a transition in that position.
Senator, your fellow Senator Tom Tillis saying right now that he would oppose any nominee with all of this going on. Lisa Murkowski agreeing with him today. Do you agree with that?
You know, I don't, but May 15th is when his due date is, so to speak. You know, I'm an obstetrician, so I work with due dates. So his due date is May the 15th. I think we'll have this issue resolved between now and then. And again, I go back to let's wait and listen to the president weigh in on this particular discussion.
Well, you know, there's a question about who is going to replace Chair Powell, of course, and I'm wondering to what extent you think this colors that conversation. If the president's pick, whether it's one of the Kevins or somebody else, if he happens to surprise us, Senator, is seen as being too close to this administration, too politically motivated, because this, in many eyes, boils down to a story about Fed independence.
Well, I think the president's going to choose one that is going to do the best for the American economy. And the president happens to believe, and I agree, that we need to lower interest rates. I think we need to take a look at this quantitative easing that's going on. By the way, I'm very happy with the president working with Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac and buying back those bonds to bring interest rates down and impact the cost of housing right now. So there's lots of great things out there the president is doing to impact the true problems, and that would be the cost of housing. Thanks to 4 years of Joe Biden's inflation, it led to a 50% increase in housing costs.
I want to turn to the credit card cap that President Trump has introduced. I know that you are supporting it right now. The question is, how do you get that through Congress if right now that's up to the states?
Well, I think that'll be a challenge for us, but that's why I came here. Look, I think it's important to realize that American families are paying $300 a month between paying interest on their credit card as well as the swipe fees. That banks are charging 20 to 30% interest, that Americans are paying 7 times more for swipe fees than the European Union is. So I think that what we've seen here is this oligomonopoly between 2 credit cards and a handful of banks. So I think that this will lower the cost of gas and groceries by 1 or 2%. And when the American people see that, they'll get behind it and push their members of Congress to pass this. This could be one of the simplest things we could do to lower the cost of living for hardworking American families.
Well, this is really important to our audience, and I know it is to you, Senator. You co-sponsored the Credit Card Competition Act of 2023, which neither Leader Schumer or Thune ever brought to the floor. Have you talked to Leader Thune about getting a vote on this now that the president has planted a flag on this issue?
Sure. Leader Thune's been very receptive to these conversations, and we'll wait to see when the opportunity arises. But again, if the job of Congress is to address the cost of living, just passing our credit card competition bill alone would lower the cost of gas and groceries by 1 or 2%. Fortunately, gas prices are coming down thanks to President Trump's policies of drill, baby, drill. But we still have other work to do. So I think that this would be a great win for the American people.
Well, Doctor, I've got to ask you as well, if we're going to talk prices here, about the most recent attempts to revive the expanded Obamacare subsidies that expired at the end of last year. You and I talked about this around the longest shutdown in American history, and we're doing this again. You saw the bill that passed the House last week with 17 Republicans, and I realize that's a different matter. It's a clean extension. But Bernie Moreno's bill in the Senate appears to be bringing people together on this, a 2-year extension with eligibility requirements and other restrictions. Does that become the new law, and is that what's best for patients?
Well, I've not got to see it yet, and certainly Republicans want every American to have affordable, meaningful health insurance of some type right now. And so I need to see what's in that bill, first of all, but we need to address fraud, and so far in my conversations with Democrats, they're not willing to address fraud. We want to take all these Obamacare monies and put it in the hands of patients. Quit sending $150 billion unchecked to the insurance companies. Somewhere in there is $25 billion worth of fraud. So let's give the money to the patients, empower them. We need to pass our price tags bill, which would force every healthcare provider to show the consumer exactly what the price is. Our price tag bill will lower the cost of health insurance $1,000 per month per family. It helps everybody, not just those on Obamacare. So we've got a lot of work to be done. We know how to do it, though.
Senator, I'm sure you remember all too well the recent shutdown and the fallout from it. How confident are you that all of this can get tackled and that the government will remain open at the end of the month?
Well, certainly Republicans want to keep the government open. I think the Democrats have learned their lesson that nobody wins when the government is shut down. I see the Appropriations Committee working hard, bringing pieces together to help fund the government. We may have to do some type of a continuing resolution for a portion of it, but we're making progress. I'm going to bet that the government stays open this time.
You know, I actually tend to believe all the lawmakers that join us, Senator, and everyone recently has said, we don't want another shutdown. There's some tough memories and a lot of scar tissue from the last one. Yes. But there are fears about sliding into one or sleepwalking into a shutdown, particularly with the pushback that we're seeing following the fatal ICE shooting in Minneapolis and how that might affect the debate around Homeland Security funding. Do you share those concerns? And could we find ourselves talking about a shutdown because of this new turn of events?
In all my private discussions with Democrats, they want to avoid a shutdown. Republicans want to avoid a shutdown as well. We need to continue to work on the appropriations process. I think Senator Susan Collins has done a remarkable job leading that particular efforts. She tells us she's making progress. So I'm not thinking there's going to be a shutdown. Time will tell, though. Republicans do not want to shut the government down.
Well, we'd like to stay in touch with you on it, Senator. It's good to have you back. Dr. Roger Marshall with us live from Capitol Hill. We thank you as always.